I'd like to thank you for inviting me on the show. It's such an honour to be here, and I'd just like to say that when I'm not playing Xbox with my mate Thor, I really like to listen to my favourite podcast,
Pop Culture Pastor.
I always think about, like, 100 years from now, who will be the people in our pop culture world that will be remembered as, like, larger than pop culture? Like, who will be these icons? You know, like kind of like John Wayne was before.
Who will be the Charlie Chaplin of this time
before
period?
he got canceled, you know, because he was not living in the present time.
It is weird who we do uplift and keep. Like, Marilyn Monroe wasn't on the scene that long. Mm-hmm. And then
she's iconic.
She's iconic now. And if you go into, like, music, the Forever 27 Club, like, anyone that's legitimately part of it, like Kurt Cobain, Jim Morrison, Jimi Hendrix, Janis Joplin, I mean, you give them a larger than life credibility that I don't know if it's fully deserved or not. It's just that something happened and now it's just cemented.
This may get me canceled, but is Kurt Cobain nearly as big if he doesn't die then? Like, if he's still alive and Nirvana's like this aging band still out there trying to cash in on their mega popularity? I mean, because they're not U2, right? Yeah. If he doesn't die, they're not. Nirvana's not U2. They don't enjoy that kind of length, do they?
I mean, Pearl Jam has gone on forever, but I mean, they're not.
But Eddie himself wildly changed his sound.
Yes,
I'm not sure Kurt and Nirvana had that in them.
Yeah, I mean, they'd have to move Dave to the front.
Yeah, Foo Fighters wouldn't even be a thing. Although, I mean, it's not like they're enjoying the swells of mega popularity now.
They have a following.
Yeah. Anyways, I only talk about that. Well, let's welcome everyone first. Hey, welcome to Pop Culture Pastor. Dave and Cody here, as always, to talk about pop culture this week.
It's how we roll.
We're going to talk about WCW 90s wrestling later.
I'm so excited
with our friend Jackson.
Yeah.
Who's just a diehard WCW wrestling guy.
Like, he knows more wrestling and has forgotten more wrestling than I'll ever know. So
hopefully we'll give you a nice general pop culture thing, because I know that's pretty niche. Some of you are going to be like, well, I don't really care about 90s WCW wrestling.
Stay tuned for the lobby. I know there will be some great questions.
Yeah. The reason I ask about the icons is because we have Dolly Parton news. And I feel like Dolly is iconic.
And I'm going to be...
Are you about to engage in Dolly Parton slander? Because I don't know if I can handle it. She's iconic.
But I just don't get it. That's my thing, is like, I don't get it. Like,
she's working 9 to 5.
She is.
What a way to make a living.
And she will always love you, even before Whitney did it. I mean,
Jolene.
Like, I really don't get it. Like, she's just become this larger than life person.
She's super nice. She's super kind. And she does a lot of charitable things.
So that's why I don't have a problem with it. It's just when people say, well, Dolly is phenomenal. And I'm like,
yeah, she's known more for her philanthropy now. I would say the last big thing she did pop culture-wise was probably Steel Magnolias. Like Julia Roberts movie. Like that was a while ago.
Many moons ago.
Yeah. And of course she has her Stampede in Branson and Pigeon Forge. Her theme restaurants where you get to watch people riding horses and stuff. The North and the South. It's like medieval times, except for it's the South. It's redneck. But it's delightful, and you get to drink gravy, which is always fun. Anyways, I bring up Dolly because she's taking part. This is amazing. She's doing some promotion work for Taco Bell,
Okay.
which is one of my most favorite things ever. And she's doing it with another celebrity, I guess.
Okay.
named Doja Cat.
Oh, yeah. Mm-hmm.
Oh, you say that like you know who that is. Who's Doja Cat? Why does she not have a real name?
Because that's how artists roll these days, singers, yeah.
Apparently, Doja Cat created a viral jingle on TikTok
Yep.
about the Mexican pizza, and now her and Dolly are going to be like doing some promotional work on TikTok for the Mexican pizza coming back to Taco Bell.
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, Doja Cat has songs.
How do you feel about the Mexican pizza at Taco Bell?
There's probably too much veggies on it.
Get out. Get out right now. How do you just not like good food?
Because my food ate the veggies, so I'm good. Like, it's circle life.
What's your go-to at Taco Bell? What's your go-to order at Taco Bell?
I'm not that big of a Taco Bell guy.
Why are we friends? How did this happen?
Like, I'll eat Taco Bell, but I won't go out of my way for Taco Bell.
The closest one to here is 25 minutes away in Iola, and I have driven there many times just to get Taco Bell.
Never have I ever.
It's weird though, because Taco Bell has, I call it the 1 out of 5 rule. So Taco Bell, I love Taco Bell, but there's 1 out of every 5 Taco Bell trips where it's a vast disappointment. They just have this one time out of every 5 where the food's not good, the service isn't good. It all just seems to happen all at once at the old Taco Bell.
I will also blame the Taco Bell that was in this particular town when I was growing up.
I've heard the legend
And so
that it was very dirty, apparently.
yeah.
Many health violations.
But somehow KFC, which was like they were the same building, somehow the food still tasted good at KFC. But like knowing how bad it was on the inside.
No, my kingdom right now for a Taco Bell / KFC. I would trade it in a second. I would have still eaten there. I don't care how dirty it was. I don't care how many health violations. I want 2 bean burritos and some mashed potatoes and gravy.
You have to go through the drive-through.
So you didn't see it? Yeah. What are we talking about? Like roaches?
That was one of the things.
It was almost like you didn't want to say it. Like that hasn't been a restaurant that's been gone for 15 years.
That was one of the things.
One of the things. Wait, what are we talking about here? Look, they're long gone. We can't get in trouble. What are we talking about? This is Chanute, Southeast Kansas history.
I don't want to slander any good names that might have been working there, so we'll move on.
All right. We'll move on. You cannot stop my love for Taco Bell anyways. A new study out there, Cody, we'll get serious for a moment. An analysis of America's social media and internet habits have found, this is by way of Relevant magazine, by the way, found that all the significant news events of the last few weeks, out of all of that stuff, nothing grabbed our attention like the defamation trial between what we've talked about between Amber Heard and Johnny Depp. That got far more clicks and attention than the war in Ukraine, anything with Elon Musk and Twitter, even the Supreme Court's leaked draft about Roe versus Wade.
So shockingly, I feel that like Ukraine, we can handle it for a couple days.
Yeah.
Prolonged exposure, we turn our gaze somewhere else and we just kind of keep it in the back of our mind like, oh yeah, that's happening. I want to say that this is kind of a fatigue thing from not only us having 24-hour news cycles and networks, but like 9/11 / war in Iraq. Like those 2 events like consumed everything. And like anything that drags on past a couple days, we're like, we cannot mentally handle that sort of fatigue and emotional drainage.
Could this be a good thing? Because here's what I'm sensing. Like, let's take the abortion issue. Let's take that. Let's put that in focus here. Could it be that the last few years we've been so bitter and angry just because of a lot of extenuating things? So the pandemic, a shift in our lives that we haven't had to deal with before, and people, and then the polarization just of our culture in general. Is this a sign that we're just tuning some of this stuff out? We're just tired of it. And maybe people are burying themselves in something like the Amber Heard Johnny Depp trial because the stakes are lower. Yes, much, much lower. And we don't want big stakes right now. We're just worn out. Maybe we're worn out. We're ready to stop being bitter at each other. I don't know. Am I grasping it?
So I don't think it's a good sign. I think it's a warning symptom of where we are, that like mentally we can't process this. And so we purposely tune it out. I don't think that we're over picking sides and fighting with each other, because as much media and people on my timeline and news feed that are pro Johnny Depp on this, there's a small but seemingly growing number that's Amber Heard fans. And like, so like, we're still ready to pick and fight at each other. I just don't think we're mentally at the point where we can handle these large items.
Well, I guess I find it weird that people are picking sides. I haven't watched much of this, but when I do watch it, I'm just like, neither one of these people are normal.
No, and I don't think anyone comes out of this looking squeaky clean.
Well, that's what I think, is everything I've seen or read and or heard from actually watching some video of it is I'm like, I'm not finding that either of these people were probably super innocent in this deal, all told. Is she probably guilty of defamation? Maybe. I'm leaning towards maybe, but is Johnny Depp a normal dude? No. Nope.
And like, it's weird how heavily involved people have gotten with this. Like, fan is short for fanatic. And a lot of people have become fanatics about this. Like, how dare Amber Heard do this to Johnny? She ruined his career. I would say there were several bad movie choices in the past 10 years that derailed Johnny Depp's career.
Yeah, that's true.
Every
Pirates Caribbean movie after the first one would be first on my list, because they're not good.
Like, I know people love the Alice in Wonderland movies.
Yeah.
It's Tim Burton. It's Johnny Depp. I've seen it 100 times before.
Well, and then what we do with it, because we sense that the stakes aren't high. And so there's a lot of memes and jokes out there. And a lot of domestic abuse survivors are saying this trial's popularity has been difficult on them. Mm-hmm. Because no one wants their experience to be, material for internet jokes, right?
Yeah, and I mean, if Amber's not telling the truth about what happened, then someone is making it so that it's harder to believe victims. Yeah. If Amber is telling the truth about it, then you're seeing a huge portion of the country vocally come out in support of a abuser. So yeah. I mean, it's not good. This
case makes me feel a lot like the Jussie Smollett thing did, in that before Dave Chappelle made kind of a brilliant joke out of it. I feel like we could laugh at it a little bit. I felt uneasy about the Jussie Smollett thing, because I'm just like, man, this guy's probably lying and it does disservice. So, but like anybody who's not on the opposite end of Black Lives Matter will take this as saying like it's all a lie, but we all know it's not a lie. And, like not that, that there's things that need to be fixed in this country. I mean, Jussie Smollett's lying. But it's the same way here. It's just like that's kind of making a mockery of like what we just said. Like it's kind of making a mockery of domestic abuse. And if I had to guess what was going on in this relationship, she may have been being physically abusive to him, but he's probably being at least mentally abusive to her.
It's a toxic relationship.
Because unhealthy people abuse. That's what happens.
Yeah, it's toxic. And so...
Yeah, it's just kind of sad. I just thought I'd bring that up and ask you, like, do you think this is us turning a corner, but you don't? And I was afraid you might say that.
I mean, I could be wrong, but...
Actor James Cromwell?
Okay, yes, familiar with him.
From Babe? And Babe 2, Pig in the City? That'll do, Pig.
Evidently, those are his 2 acting credits.
I also remember him from Star Trek First Contact as the guy who developed the warp drive.
See, he's doing things.
Yeah. Amazing dude. James Cromwell, 82 years old, recently glued his hand to a counter at a Starbucks in New York.
So this is a weird trend that's happening as a form of protest, like gluing your hand to something, because that happened at a Timberwolves game where a lady glued her hand to the court. But
why?
Because the Timberwolves owner, something to do with animal rights.
Okay, yeah. So this is what James was doing to protest the coffee chain's extra charge for plant-based milk. I just assumed that would just be more expensive because it's
more difficult,
more processed.
Yeah. And like, so with the lady, security lifted her up before it dried. So, no harm, no foul. But, like, I think you'd have to glue more of your body down.
Why didn't you go with the face, James? You should have went with the face. Well, anyways, he sat at a Starbucks counter. He's wearing a Free the Animals t-shirt. And he read a statement denouncing the surcharge for vegan milk alternatives.
So I don't want to be rude to James, but
we do live in Kansas.
We live in Kansas.
A lot of farmers, a lot of people make their living off of
the
agriculture.
The TV show Yellowstone.
Oh, yeah.
Worded it perfectly in regards to Kevin Costner's character telling the animal rights activists from Coyote Ugly that you might be a vegan, but to get your beans out of the ground, or to get them in the ground and then out of the ground, the soil's killing all the worms, insecticides being sprayed to make sure bugs don't ruin your food. There's tons of wildlife that is affected by you just going to plants that gets killed off.
It's not that much better for the environment.
Yeah. So, I mean, if you want to say we should have less cows on the earth, okay, whatever.
This is what he was protesting for. This is why he glued his hand to the counter. They had to use a knife to scrape it off, by the way. This is why. Because Starbucks outlets in the United States are charging 50 cents to $1 more for drinks made with plant-based milk. 50 cents. 50 cents, Cody.
If James really wanted to protest, he should protest the prices at Starbucks, B, the name of the sizes at Starbucks, and C, just Starbucks attitude in general. There was so many other things to protest.
Anyone going to Starbucks is already partaking in enough pretentiousness that you might as well be pretentious and fork over that 50 cents.
Yeah.
Like, come on. It's Starbucks.
So I'm concerned about James with him being 82. Like, is he on blood thinners? Because that's going to do some damage. You're going to be bleeding all over the place. This could be bad.
I'm just going to say it, James at 82, and I'm looking at a picture of him. He looks like he needs protein to me. I'm just saying. Apparently he's vegan. I don't really care if you're vegan. I don't want to offend any vegan listeners to the podcast.
Yeah,
because I don't really care.
You can be a vegan.
Yeah,
but
like the moment you start trying to press it on to everyone else, like just eat what you want to eat.
Yeah,
and like look, as I'm sitting here, I can honestly say, yeah, we messed up food in this country. Just totally messed it up. It's messed up.
Yeah,
but there's no like, how are you going to turn it back now? I don't even know. And it's not just a fix of like, well, we'll just all eat plants. No, I don't think that's it.
No.
As we just described. But according to the genius of Yellowstone. And they know. Kevin Costner knows.
He does.
Speaking of Yellowstone.
Yes.
Harrison Ford and Helen Mirren have been tapped to star in the Yellowstone Origin Series 1932. How about that?
So when they announced this series, I'm like, this is stupid. Now that they've announced who's in it, I'm like, I will be watching this whether it's stupid or not.
Now, 1932, this is 50 years after 1883, or almost 50 years. Is Harrison Ford old Tim, or is he the son? Is he the son?
Oh, like, he would have to be Tim.
You'd have to be Tim, right? Yeah.
I would think.
I'm so excited. Does that mean Helen Mirren is Faith Hill? I'm so into this.
Does that mean we get flashbacks along the way of Tim and Faith?
Well, I hope so. 1932, it says, the studio says, we'll introduce a new generation of the Dutton family and explore the early 20th century when pandemics, historic drought, the end of Prohibition, and the Great Depression all plague the Mountain West and the Duttons who call it home. That's the official synopsis.
I would think that the plagues and like all that stuff might miss them, but my bad.
Yeah, they don't tell us anything else about it. They don't let on who they're playing, but it has to be them, right? It's 50 years later.
Because
it can't be the kid. Harrison Ford is too old to be the kid.
Yeah, he is not passing for a 60-year-old these days.
But what are the odds that they would still be alive?
Slim. Especially with all the things that we just listed off as happening in the Mountain West area.
Will Harrison Ford be doing the tongue acting that Kevin Costner does? That's
hope.
Expert level acting. That's expert level acting. 1932, set to premiere on Paramount Plus in December. And we're all in. I mean, who we fooling? We can tell all the jokes, but we're in.
I mean, literally, I was not going to watch a single second of this and not feel bad. And now I will watch every second of it. And who knows how I'll feel at the end.
Okay, let's go out to the lobby. We're going to head out to the lobby and answer some listener questions. We'll be right back. All right, welcome back. We are now out in the lobby, and we are prepared to answer listener questions.
Okay.
As we do out in the lobby. I mean, aside from get refreshments.
I'm enjoying a Mountain Dew right now. So.
You are. I've got an iced coffee I'm almost done with, and I need a refill. Probably something without caffeine, though. I don't like to get too amped.
Yeah.
First of all, we need to. One of the questions referenced something we just talked about in the news section. So, we just told. I guess we didn't tell you how we felt about it, but Kyle Kessinger wants to know what we think about Harrison Ford and Helen Mirren starring in the 1932 Yellowstone prequel. And we kind of just let you on in that last little segment in the news there that we're here for it.
Oh yeah, and like evidently everyone and their mom wants to work for Taylor Sheridan. That's what I take from this.
It's so weird, isn't it?
Yeah.
Like how do they keep getting these big names for a TV show on Paramount Plus?
Yeah, I mean, just think about the last show having Thomas Hanks appear in an episode.
Not just that, but his wife, Rita Wilson.
And Billy Bob.
Billy Bob Thornton. Yeah, man. I mean, we're burying the lead though, because when you're doing a Western, and you get Samuel Elliott
Yeah.
in a lead role. Oh, and Sam Elliott is a national treasure. I mean, he's old and he says things that are insensitive sometimes.
He killed Bigfoot. And Hitler.
I love that when your go-to reference when we bring up Sam Elliott is to reference like maybe one of his least known movies. Like that's your reference point for Sam Elliott.
Yes.
It's not Roadhouse.
It's not Lonesome Dove.
It's not any of the amazing westerns he's been in. It's not Tombstone. It's the man who killed Bigfoot and Hitler.
Yeah. I'm here for it.
You are so weird. You're so weird. So yeah, Kyle, I mean, Yellowstone is like a guilty pleasure. I liked it the first season, and then every season since I've subsequently liked it just a tiny bit less. Like it's almost cartoonish in its ridiculousness now, especially with some of the characters. Like Beth is a caricature of a human being.
I find myself rooting for certain characters' deaths. And I should not.
But not Casey. Long live Casey.
Protect that, gentlemen. Please.
But there are characters related to Casey. Close to Casey. Who we would like if they were not on the show anymore. Not saying any names for his wife, but oh man. Some of the characters are just kind of written so shallowly that they're kind of annoying. It's not the actress's fault.
Yeah.
I mean, Beth at least gets a lot to do. Like, I don't know the actress's name, but she gets a lot to do.
She does, like, everything.
But Casey's wife is so paper thin, her character in that show, that she just comes off as annoying. And that's unfortunate because she's actually, like, the character who carries the most, like, real world, where there's a lack of compassion for a certain group of people. She's kind of carrying that storyline, and it's unfortunate.
Yeah.
Actually,
and
I'm here for Native American love.
Yeah, she's been so wishy-washy on the show. Like, oh, I'm here this minute. Oh, I'm back here at the Dunn Ranch, which I swore I never would be at again.
Yeah. So I have issues with the actual show, not least of which is Kevin Costner's tongue acting. I'm not sure what he's doing with his mouth in the latter seasons of Yellowstone.
He's constantly dehydrated.
So when 1883 was a thing that was coming out, I wasn't real pumped. But then when I watched it, I loved 1883. I love that show.
Yeah.
Like it's one of literally, for me, it's a top 10 TV show for me of all time. I just enjoyed it immensely.
Especially if it's just a one-off. It goes to the top of the one-off.
Well,
list.
it appears that that's what it's going to be, that they're not going to continue that story in a direct continuation. We may see some of those characters and other things. Clearly, well, I won't say it. That's a spoiler.
Spoilers.
Yeah, I don't want to spoil anything. But yeah, I loved 1883. But then again, I was back to position one of like, well, I'm not really sure I'm going to be here for 1932 because that just sounds like a ridiculous premise. I don't really care about the Dutton family through all the eras of history.
No.
And then they were like, okay, but we got Harrison Ford and Helen Mirren. It's like, I can't wait to see this show. This is amazing.
I don't know how you got old Harry, but
I'm in.
Yes.
I'm in. So yeah, Kyle, we're definitely in for that show. Eric Farmer asks us, who is your favorite Star Wars character in all of the Star Wars universe? Legends, movies, books, etc. He says mine is Revan. Is that a Darth Revan?
I believe so.
Okay. I'm a huge fan of the original trilogy. A marginal fan, I wouldn't say marginal. I was here for the prequels. But they soured me a little bit, enough that I didn't watch the cartoons when they came out. And then by the time the new sequels came out, I was jazzed. And I liked the first one and liked the second one. And then the third one, for me, of the sequels, just really kind of destroyed my Star Wars fandom. And so now I'm in a place with Star Wars where it's sort of love-hate, you know?
Yeah.
I mean, if I had to pick a favorite character, it'd probably be from the original trilogy, and I'm probably going Lando.
Oh.
I love Lando. I love Lando because when you were a kid in the 80s, Billy D. Williams was just cool anyways. He was in these beer commercials for Colt 45. One, a malt liquor sipper. You know? One chill malt liquor sipper. You know, he was just cool. And so when he was in Star Wars and he's like the cool guy, and then like he's got this facade for all of Empire. When he shows up, there's this cool facade he's putting on. And then when the stuff hits the fan and you figure out that Darth Vader's been there and Lando has been coerced into working with him, he like drops the facade perfectly in a moment that I choose to believe is amazing acting. And he says, "They arrived just before you. I had no choice." Like he just drops the cool charade. And like for me in that moment, Lando becomes like this real, like solid character.
Yeah. And
then in Return of the Jedi, from the first time you see him in Jabba's palace in disguise as a bounty hunter, you're like, oh man, yeah, I'm here for Lando. I'm here for him.
All the Lando. I mean, if we're going super big character, then I go Darth Vader, but that's not who my favorite is. I'm going to go, and it's probably more because of the actor playing him than anything. Mm-hmm. Cobb Vanth. Timothy Oliphant.
Tim Oliphant is amazing when he shows up in The Mandalorian.
And then when he has his duel with Cad Bane, who just got off a train.
Hold on. Can I throw out an honorable mention for Cad Bane? I love that someone created a character for Star Wars who was just like based on Lee Van Cleef from his favorite Western. Because that dude is Lee Van Cleef.
Yeah.
Hey, Vance, you should have kept your armor. You know, like this. He's basically out of a Clint Eastwood Western.
Yes, I'm here for that. And so he easily has stolen my heart for in the Star Wars cinematic universe. And then a close honorable mention for me is the guy that is in Rogue One that I'm going to butcher his name because that's how meaningful he was to me. Mm-hmm. Chirrut Imwe.
Chirrut Imwe. Chirrut Imwe. Chirrut Imwe. I don't know how to say his name either. Did you look it up on Wikipedia?
Yes. He is the blind monk that keeps repeating the phrase, "I am one with the Force and the Force is with me." I just loved it.
Well, it results in like the most emotional part of the movie.
Oh, yeah.
It's amazing. That scene in that movie is amazing.
So, dare I say, Rogue One might be the best Star Wars movie since the original trilogy.
It certainly could be. My only concern with saying that is if you take off the end stinging scene, that end stinger of a scene, if you take that off, is it still up there? Because that scene where Darth Vader just goes ham, which is basically what we've all wanted to see since we were 2.
Yeah.
Oh, man, that scene really... I mean, I left the theater.
It seals, like, the movie. Oh, that was a great movie.
It's like the ultimate, most flavorful cherry with drugs in it on top. It's just an amazing cherry on top of what's a pretty good movie.
And I do like the droid in that one. Voiced by Alan...
Alan Tudyk.
Yeah, Tudyk.
Yeah, is good. Yeah, that's like the ultimate. That scene though in that movie is the ultimate cherry with all the sugar.
Yeah. It also might be my favorite Mads Mikkelsen appearance, I guess.
Yeah, I forgot he was in that.
Yeah,
I forgot. It's good stuff. Okay, good question.
Yeah, that was.
I all of my characters. You know, how can you not love Han Solo? Han Solo's an amazing character in the original trilogy. I was a fan of Jabba the Hutt, as also a fan of Jabba Slave Leia, as many young boys were at that time. Sorry, was that too much?
TMI.
Too much information. Danica Giesman asks us, do you read the book before you watch the movie?
Oh, I got the perfect answer for this.
Man, that's it's such a hard question, like, because it branches out into all these other questions.
This one's easy breezy, lemon squeezy.
Here's the problem. Any book I read before I saw a movie and that I loved, I'm pretty much always disappointed with the movie. The easy one to bring up is Lord of the Rings. And I don't think Lord of the Rings are bad movies. Don't get me wrong. I think they're great movies. But there's something about the way you envision it in your head that it's always disappointing to see someone else's vision, right?
Mm-hmm.
So I think there's something to that. I read the original Lord of the Rings stories while listening to Prodigy, the electronica band from England. And so I had this vision in my head. Like, seriously, I read the whole trilogy while listening to one of their albums, the ones with what was their big song?
This is your story.
Give me the game and I'll test ya. You know, something about Firestarter. Firestarter. That was it.
Okay, because I was going to say Prodigy is like a game service that the kids play at school.
No. Prodigy was a band. Anyways, I don't know why. It just went well with the material in my head. And so I listened to that while I was reading Lord of the Rings trilogy. I had read The Hobbit many years earlier. And so by the time they come out, the Lord of the Rings movies, I was thrilled to see on the screen. I actually cried at the end of the second one, Two Towers, when Gandalf shows up. Look for me on the whatever day when the sun rises, you know, and they're at the top of the hill. They come charging down the hill. And that moment, like, so encapsulated what I envisioned it that I wept in the theater. So there was moments that were good, but then the Hobbit movies, total destruction. Scorched earth. No, not a fan.
Well, it didn't need to be 3 movies.
Yes! 2 movies. Make it 2.
Yeah.
You could have easily included the extra. Like, the third movie was the making it into 3 movies was so egregiously money grubbing. It was terrible. Terrible. I hated the Hobbit adaptation.
Okay. So for me, you always watch the movie. Never read the book. The only exception I have is Harry Potter, because I grew up with Harry Potter, and then by the time the 5th book rolls out, they start making the movies, and I'm like, I'm going to stop reading.
Yeah, well,
and so then it was like, okay, this is good. I enjoy it. But I have 2 examples that work really well to illustrate my point of why you always just watch the movie if you know that they're going to make this book into a movie. Mm-hmm. So Hunger Games, it was announced it's coming out. This is going to be the next big book series. It's like Harry Potter. Okay, you're going to love it. I read the book. Loved it because it's like the book has a lot of survival stuff in it. Mm-hmm. And I'm like, okay, this is intense. And I'm like, oh, this movie, they're going to show how she has to live off the land, some deep sacrifices. None of that. None of it. It was pure filth. It was a waste of time. It was garbage.
Yeah, but she was the girl on fire.
She was. But then, so there was this movie that everyone and their mom was excited about called The Dark Tower. Oh, and I had not read a single book from that series of books by one Stevie King, and literally loved the movie because I did not have this gross misrepresentation of they just combined 17 books into one movie.
I think that was the part that stunk the most was there was so much talk of making that a series, a streaming series, which is what it deserved to be because there's so much content and they just mushed all this content into one movie, which wasn't even a long movie. It was a 2-hour less movie. And you had I think the part that really was terrible, the waste part was we deserved 17 hours of content with The Dark Tower. And we got 2. And we deserve 17 hours with Idris Elba.
Oh, yeah.
We deserve 17 hours with Matthew McConaughey, who was born to play that guy. He's born to play Randall Flagg. Like, he's perfect. And just nothing. He's not even used all that much in that. Yeah, it was just disappointing. It was disappointing. Yeah. That's a big one. So, like, yeah, if you read the book, you're going to be disappointed.
Or you read all 17.
I had a similar experience with Harry Potter because my wife thought I would like the books. And I read the first book, and it was she said they get more adult as you go along because it's very childlike.
They do.
The first book. But then I got to a point where, like, the movies are already out, and I want to watch the movies. I was into the movies. And so I never read like anything after the third book. Cause I was just like, well, I'm just going to watch the movies. And cause they're more enjoyable for me anyways.
Yeah.
Harry Potter's not really my wheelhouse for books wise. Like I'm into more kind of like in-depth, intense stuff like Lord of the Rings. Or, even Game of Thrones, which I read a long time ago. So sometime after I read Lord of the Rings, I started reading Game of Thrones. Cause that's actually, the first book came out a long time ago. And then this is all, I'm just going to admit something to everybody since I'm a pastor, but I tried to watch the show and it just got disappointing because they make so many changes. There's so much extra in there, including a lot of the things the show got known for, very HBO-ized with some of the more adult stuff, which look, there's terrible things going on in the book, but they don't dwell on it. They don't sit there and describe it. You just know terrible things are happening. And so I was a huge fan of the books, but not so much the TV show.
Yeah.
And yeah, it's like, but that seems to be the rhythm.
I think that if you are a person that reads, you go ahead and read the book.
Yeah.
But if you're someone that is more of a movie person, watch the movies. Comic books are kind of like the exception because they can borrow from so many different storylines. Mm-hmm. Like this Batman movie, I didn't know where they were necessarily going.
Yeah.
Like they could have borrowed from one of 100 different universes of Batman.
Anything by Michael Crichton, don't waste your time on the book. Just watch the movie. I read Jurassic Park before that movie came out. And the book was good. The ending was terrible.
Sounds about
but
right.
it was, like Michael Crichton tends to be pretty cerebral.
Yeah.
And he throws in he does, like, I'll give this up for Michael Crichton. Dude does his research. He throws in a lot of like scientific stuff that's like cutting edge usually. And then when the movie came out, it was very Spielberg because that's who did it. Right. Mm-hmm. And I just loved the original Jurassic Park movie. But the book, not so much. Now, on the other hand, when I read The Lost World, Jurassic Park 2, the second book by Michael Crichton, I also thought it was trash. But then the movie was trash as well. So all was right with the world. It was all hot garbage. So, everything was okay.
Yeah, Crichton doesn't always know how to end things.
No. Terrible. Deus Ex Machina all day.
Yeah.
The Andromeda Strain, I still get mad that my English teacher made us read that in high school. I read this whole book for that ending. Trash. I'm not even an author. I couldn't write to save my life, and I know ending a book with Deus Ex Machina is trash.
Spoilers.
It's just like, tell me you don't know how to end this story without telling me you don't know how to end this story. All right. Anyways, stay tuned for my new book, Michael Crichton and Deus Ex Machina, Why Everything He Wrote is Trash. All right. That's all the questions we have for this time. There was another question, but we're going to save that for maybe next week's main point because it's too good.
It was a really...
We need to flesh that one out more, and it's about cameos.
Yeah.
And so we're going to maybe hold that one back for the main topic of next week's pod. So, all right, when we come back, we're going to talk WCW Wrestling, World Championship Wrestling. It's time for another Be Kind Rewind coming up. Okay, we're back. We're back here after the lobby, back into the main studio, the round table, to talk about something. I mean, this is so niche.
It is.
Like, we're going so niche right now.
I was really inspired by your photo op at Comic-Con.
Yes. So I got to meet Booker T. And that, yeah, we knew we were. Oh, so the whole story here is we knew we were going to have to talk about this eventually. Because this is a very niche geek fandom for me, as well as our guest here. We have Jackson Chauncey, who we're just going to call our wrestling geek.
Yes.
You are now, I commend you. You are now a geek of the round table. And Jackson is here as our resident wrestling geek. Now, how deep do we go with like 90s WCW here?
Well, I thought about that when Cody had mentioned this subject, and I feel my fandom starts at about 1995. Super Brawl 1995, WrestleMania 6 were kind of my first two tapes that I own. Probably watched 100 times each.
Here, bend that mic a little bit down there. There you go. All right, perfect. Yeah, that's okay. So WCW, Eric Bischoff takes over that thing and basically starts what we know of as WCW in 1988, I think. But really, it's just kind of there for a while, and then somewhere around the mid 90s, they make like this sort of a philosophical change in what they're doing. They're going to go out and get all of these old school, formerly WWF guys, and it was WWF back then, which is now the WWE. And they're gonna bring over these massively popular things. So like my fandom starts when I was a kid in the 80s of WWF with Hulk Hogan and Macho Man and guys like the Iron Sheik and Captain Lou Albano, like all these guys. But it was very cartoonish in a way back then. Andre the Giant. It was different. And then when they start bringing these guys over to the WCW, and there's a corner they start to turn here, and to make it something more of like a gritty male soap opera in a way. And that's kind of there. So go ahead and explain like what made you start getting into WCW? What was it in particular?
I think it was about like anybody. You're just flipping through the channels one day and you come across it and spend 5-10 minutes trying to figure everything out. And then before you know it, you're hooked. I would say as a kid, I was definitely towards WCW more than WWE or F at that time. I always made sure I was home because back then TV was appointment viewing instead of the streaming age we're in now where you can catch it anytime. I believe it was right after Captain Planet, they'd put WCW Saturday Night on, and I would always catch the last few minutes of Captain Planet. Great show, by the way. And then be ready for Saturday night.
Yeah. So how old are you, Jackson?
I am 32.
Yeah. So this is catching you in your young years, right? So in my WCW fandom here, I'm in my early 20s by the time I'm super into WCW. Like I'm 20, 21 years old. And my friends, I just happened to be friends with guys who were into wrestling, and they would watch both of them. They would watch Raw and they would watch Nitro. And so I kind of got into it that way, and I just started watching it with them. And I can remember the exact moment. They would get the pay-per-views, of course. They would everybody would pitch in money. We'd all go to someone's house and hang out and watch these pay-per-views. And the pay-per-view where Hulk Hogan turns heel.
Yeah, Bash at the Beach.
Bash at the Beach, yeah. It's a famous point in WCW wrestling. It's kind of the beginning of the explosion for them, where the NWO is born, the New World Order, and all of these formerly wrestling hero good guys all of a sudden are bad guys. And this is genius. It's like really brilliant stuff that basically leads to WCW beating WWF now WWE. I mean, I think they, between like 96 and 98,
83 weeks to be exact.
80 some weeks. They have better ratings than WWF on Monday night. They call it the Monday Night Wars.
Yeah.
Cody.
Yes, they do. So I also grew up watching WCW, but like I got in trouble for watching WWF. Like Triple H had a saying, and I did that saying once, and then boom, grounded from WWF and strictly WCW.
I got adept to changing the channel when my mom would walk through.
Yeah.
Well, there's a definite window.
Oh yeah.
Before like the Attitude Era really gets hold, because there's a point in WCW somewhere around late 99, near the end for WCW where it turns a corner and you're like, oh boy.
Yeah.
Like parents would not approve because they completely go into this Attitude Era, and it's a little risky.
So I feel WCW benefited really heavily from the WWF discarding some of these older guys and poaching them and building off their character development for the past 20 years, and then being like, oh, America's hero, Hulk Hogan, say your prayers, eat your vitamins, is now going to be spray painting jabronis' backs.
Well, let's start at the beginning of that, because I think that's like, if we're going to go through the WCW here, we might as well go kind of chronologically through this when it gets big. And it starts with this tag team that comes over from the WWF. And they write it into the show as if like they're trespassing, that they're not under contract. They just kind of start showing up. And this, of course, is Kevin Nash and Scott Hall. Scott Hall, who just recently passed away, which made me very sad, because like Kevin Nash, not so much, but Scott Hall, I think, and Jackson, you'd be the expert to ask here. I think Scott Hall's one of the best heels of all time.
I would agree with that, and I was a fan in the Razor Ramon days. He was probably the first genuine WWE, WWF guy that I would call myself a fan of when I'd go to, I believe it was Video Warehouse at the time, and rent the old pay-per-views. It was always, what's Razor doing? So I would agree with that sentiment. Definitely the best non-world champion, at least among the best, I would say.
Yeah. So he never wins a world championship. They never let him have one.
Nope.
He's a tag team world champion several times.
Intercontinental, U.S., he was the guy you would beat to get to the top guy. Man. He was the roadblock, but he was never the top.
Yeah, I always loved him, but it wasn't until he recently died where all these guys that worked with him started telling these stories about how much of an awesome dude he was, that I really got sad. I was like, oh man, I knew you had, like, some of these things you don't know unless you're super into it and you follow the stories and have listened to all the podcasts. And I just recently kind of went back to the Nitros and started watching through them again, because it's basically a fandom for about 5 years of my life, 95 to 2000. And then when WCW goes kaput, I'm kind of out. I just didn't follow it after that.
I would say the same for myself. I got out roughly 2001, 2002, and took a time off maybe till late 2000s. Just caught it on TV, watched for 5 minutes, and was hooked all over again.
It is. I mean, wrestling really is this. It's men soap operas. That's. Yeah. I mean, that's what it is.
That's how I've always described it.
Yeah, it's our stories, as my grandma used to say. It's my stories. Mm-hmm. So Scott Hall and Kevin Nash, they come over, and they're just, for weeks, they're kind of just showing up occasionally and like causing a scene. And then eventually, the Bash at the Beach happens. They're out there. Hulk Hogan comes out, to help them. You think he's coming out to take them out, and then he turns on. Who was it? They were.
It was Macho Man.
It's Macho Man, yeah, who later becomes a part of the NWO himself.
Everybody in that match actually does, because I believe Lex Luger and Sting are also in it. If you listen closely, Bobby Heenan spoils it, though, because when Hulk comes out and he says, but who's he here to help, or who's he going to help? And
Yeah.
You don't think about it then because it's Hulk Hogan, but then you look back and
There hasn't been many. This is going to sound bad because I felt bad. A lot of these wrestlers have died young. And you get the sense when you hear the stories, read the stories, and hear about behind the scenes that this was a hard life. Like, seems like it would be glamorous, but it's a hard life, and these guys are hard on their bodies, and so some of them die pretty young. And but I cried for Scott Hall, like I shed tears. I was so sad. The other guy I did it for was Bobby the Brain. Mm-hmm. When Bobby the Brain passed, that made me so sad because that dude was another brilliant dude that I didn't really realize until I went back and restarted rewatching him. Just how amazing he is, even as an announcer. He was so good. So, like, kind of subtly hilarious. Like, the way he would say things, it was just, he was a genius, I think, too.
And I think he transcends his era, too. He's not somebody that's locked into the 80s or early 90s. He's somebody, if he was in the game today, would still be as enjoyed.
Yeah. And so in the 80s, he's like a manager. He's like an evil manager guy. He's like the foil of Hulk Hogan most of the time in Hulk's younger days. But yeah, in this era of Nitro and WCW, he's an announcer mostly. And he's very he's weirdly one of the few announcers who's kind of balanced. Mm-hmm. Like he's not over the top for the bad guy. Like who is it Madden? There's another guy named Madden who, when he would come on, he would be Mark Madden. He would be like over the top for the bad guy, right?
Yeah.
And then there's Shivani and Iron Mike Tenay.
I was going to say Tenay. Don't forget him.
Who are like over the top for WCW and the good guys. And then there was Heenan, who was just like Bobby the Brain Heenan. That was it. Like he was just, sometimes he would be like compassionate for the bad guy. Like you'd feel like he's on that side, and then he'd be for the good guy. And he just, like, I don't know any other compliment could be said about him more than he was just Bobby the Brain.
Yeah.
Yeah. Just an endearing character as an announcer. I think that's hard to do. The other guy that was kind of endearing as an announcer, which I was surprised when I went back to this era of WCW, was Larry.
Larry Zbyszko.
Larry Zbyszko. He's so popular, as a matter of fact, that this escaped me when I watched him live when I was younger, that at the beginning of every broadcast, the crowd's chanting his name. He does his own little, like, he takes a bow, basically. Mm-hmm. And I had never noticed that until I started rewatching. I was like, dang, people love some Larry Zbyszko.
That's how I am with JR.
JR, so that's a WWE guy, right?
Now AEW, but
now AEW.
Jim Ross it's my go-to for announcing.
He's the guy. So I didn't watch that era of wrestling, but he's the guy that's famous. Like, is that Stone Cold's music? Is he that guy?
Yes.
Yeah. Yes.
Okay.
He's a walking meme.
Yes.
So NWO kind of just ignites all of this. And as I went back and I've been watching through these WCWs, we were just talking before we started recording that the next real big thing to happen in WCW is the rise of Bill Goldberg, who's still around today. And Goldberg, I mean, immediately when he walks out the first time, you're like, whoa, wait a minute, this is not Billy Kidman. This is not some scrub. I mean, his body is just ridiculous. I mean, he's huge. He's ripped. But it was interesting because I remember him just kind of blowing up onto the scene from when I watched these live. But actually, it takes them a while. Like, it takes them probably 6 months to figure out what they have with him.
Okay, so when does Goldberg bust onto the scene? Because, like, the next big thing I had was not that. But my memory is not always the best.
September 22nd, 1997 is Goldberg's debut in Salt Lake City, of all places. This was one I just happened to recently rewatch because I'm going in order.
The Hugh Morris match?
Yes. Now, Hugh Morris will probably come up later because he's like one of the most, I think he's, people would say he's one of the most wasted talents. At least I would say. I mean, the guy he's 300 pounds. He could do a moonsault. I don't know.
That is impressive.
I feel like he was wasted, but instead everyone kind of remembers him for being the first dude who loses to Bill Goldberg, and he loses to him quite a bit, if I remember right.
Well, I think it was set up to make you think that it was a Hugh Morris highlight match and that he was going to walk through this guy, and I don't think the crowd quite knows what to do when Goldberg puts him down.
Yeah. Well, so for a wrestling purist, so I'm interested to know this. Like, what's your opinion? Like, did you like Goldberg? Because for me, someone who wasn't like a hardcore wrestling fan, Goldberg, I would like the NWO got me interested, but Goldberg's the reason I get hardcore into it. Like, because I just love watching him run through people. But when you watch it, I can watch it now and understand, oh, he's not a great technical, like he's not good at what he's doing in the ring. That's why he plows through people, because he's not technically proficient.
Well, he was all spectacle in an age where you didn't have a lot of that. Mm-hmm. You know, he was a firework. He'd come in, he'd do his job, and it was impressive. Nowadays, with a lot of your athletes, he can't keep up. That's why he's a relic of the past, and those matches are looked at differently. But I was huge into Goldberg. I can't make any bones about it.
The streak was impressive.
Yeah.
That, like, it just kept going, and then WCW's like, we're going to throw 50 guys at him in a hallway, and he's going to have to pin
and we're
each
going
one
to count
of them.
We're going to count it as wins, right?
He would beat people over the weekend.
That happened a lot. So I would watch pretty much the Nitros, and there were a lot of pay-per-views I wouldn't even... Once I figured out that the first thing they do on a Monday Nitro the next day is pretty much recap everything that happened the night before, I was like, well, why am I paying $50 for these pay-per-views when I could just watch the Nitro the next day and they can just tell me what happened and continue the drama? Because that's the thing about the pay-per-views, is the drama was like never resolved. Like it just keeps going on. And so I would miss, you'd miss a weekend. And then, you know, when last you left Goldberg on Thursday Night Thunder, he was like 62-0, and then he'd come back on Monday Nitro. He's like, Goldberg 72-0. And you're like, whoa, wait, what happened? Well, I missed 10 matches? I mean, what's he doing? He's working hard. And I think that, they flubbed those numbers, right?
Yeah, I think it was like the Undertaker's streak. It was done by accident, and then halfway through they realized, hey, we've got something here.
Yeah. Yeah, and so, but it takes a while before he's even kind of a foil of the NWO. And because he's for a long time during the streak, they've got him up against these, just dudes. The dude, like, who is the dude with the mullet, the karate guy? Do you remember him?
Jerry Lynn.
Yeah. Say his name again.
Oh, it's actually Jerry Flynn.
Jerry Flynn.
Jerry Lynn.
Yeah, Jerry Flynn. He's wrestling Glacier a lot. Like,
Someone needs to wrestle Glacier.
Hold on. Let's full stop for a minute and talk about Glacier, because I've tweeted about him before. Glacier is like the most regrettable wrestler that a company ever like put their full force behind.
No.
Because right before Goldberg hits the scene, man, WCW teases Glacier as a wrestler. Probably for, I'm guessing, 20 weeks before he actually appeared. And then he gets there and he's basically a Mortal Kombat clone. He's Sub-Zero from Mortal Kombat. His finishing move is a sidekick, and he's totally lame. But they keep trying to push him. And then because he starts off with a streak. Mm-hmm. Like, it's like they wanted to do this and they thought they were going to do it with Glacier, and then Goldberg falls in their lap and they're like, oh. And then they make Glacier into total, like, for a guy that starts off like 30-0 or whatever Glacier starts off with, the precipitous fall of Glacier after that is like one of the most hilarious things in WCW or in wrestling.
I feel that, like, after the end of it, I think WWE tries to use Glacier.
Do they really?
I think there's a moment that they try to bring him out.
Oh, and this poor guy has no charisma. Like, every time he opens his mouth, it's like, I'm sorry. So, like, charisma is weird because it's like one of those things you either have it or you don't. Yeah. And it can't really be coached. And this poor guy, when he opened his mouth, it was like, oh boy. You don't want him to talk. Goldberg is essentially like that. Because Goldberg doesn't say anything for the longest time. And as soon as they start having Goldberg talk, it's the beginning of the end.
Like, just have him say, "You're next."
Yep.
And that's it.
Yeah. Once he starts doing interviews, you're like, oh, no. They should have not let him talk.
I feel WCW recognized that because from what I remember, it was a lot of "You're next" or just the mannerisms. And as a kid, I bought into all the mannerisms, and scrawny child that I was, trying to do the stick my tongue out and all those things. Had the Goldberg tennis shoes. I mean, I was drinking the Kool-Aid, but obviously as an adult, you kind of see through that now.
My friends and I, we had a city league basketball team, and on this team, we had jerseys, and then we had a wrestler on the back who we most resembled. But we would do if we had hit a layup or something, got fouled for like an and one, I was Goldberg, so I would do the mannerisms. So we had a big sexy, and it was just everybody would. We had a hacksaw, Jim Duggan, so he'd hit a layup and go, oh, stick his thumb up in the air. It's just, we were goofy, but then that's how big this was at that time. And you really described it in such a way that I think that part of the charm of it is this is kids, this is before streaming. And for me, I would work in the evening time, and I had a routine. I had a VCR, and I would record. I had my WCW Nitro tape, not to be confused with my Smallville tape. Yeah, that was bad when you tape over Smallville on accident. You try to stay away from that. But I had a tape, and I would get off work. I would go get Taco Bell, and I would take it home, and I would watch WCW Nitro every late Monday night after I got off work. And that was just that was kind of my happy place. And so it's hard to explain to kids, especially. They don't get it. They don't understand that we couldn't just get home and stream it at any time. Now VCRs were a thing, and they were cheap enough by this point for everyone to get one. But it was the quality. I mean, you're messing with the tracking. The quality was never real great, especially if you taped over it more than 3 times.
Well, when you talk about making tapes, it's kind of like, wow, wizard. I've never quite that adept.
Oh, yeah. My dad would watch it, and I would ask, "Are we going to record this?" And he's like, "No, because I'm going to watch it. You're just going to have to catch up next week." I'm like, "Thanks a lot, Dad."
So, Goldberg's a big deal. He finally wins the title in a match over Hulk Hogan. If I watched the Goldberg, WWE made a Goldberg retrospective, where it turns out that Hogan was the instigator of hey, let's finally give this guy his championship. Hulk Hogan is widely respected and loved in that community too. From what I've seen, he was he would help guys in the ring and whatever. And so that was kind of I liked watching that with the Goldberg thing about how Hulk Hogan was basically the guy that put that into motion for Goldberg to finally win the championship. Ric Flair, we'd be remiss if we didn't talk about Ric Flair.
We still haven't even touched the biggest star of WCW, but you keep going.
Who's the biggest star of WCW?
This is thanks in part to Scott Hall, but the rebranding of the icon, Sting easily. Yeah. I'm naming it.
So Sting is big before the NWO, and he's got the bleach blonde crew cut.
The fluorescent paint on the face.
You can't forget the Man Called Sting theme song.
Yeah.
Yes.
Sting's a big deal. And then right around the time the NWO is rising, The Crow came out. and Sting, I would love to know, do you know how this comes about? Who convinces him to change his persona?
Well, Cody hit it on the head. It was Scott Hall's suggestion.
Wow. That's amazing.
He's lived off it the rest of his career. So
yeah.
Oh,
so
yeah.
for a year, he doesn't wrestle. He just shows up in the rafters.
Doesn't wrestle, doesn't speak, gets paid.
Is it dressed up like the Crow?
A vulture.
Yeah. There was a real life vulture. Every once in a while, he'd like pop up through the ring. Surprise. Sting, but yeah, Sting is like still out there. He's still wrestling. And I would absolutely be remiss, Cody, if I did not point out that Sting's brother is a pastor of an Assemblies of God church down in Texas that Sting attends. Sting, a Christian. He's one of us.
He is.
And that makes me pretty much like Sting.
Oh, he was another guy when we were talking about Scott Hall earlier. He had the demons. I believe with him it was maybe more pill addiction than anything else.
Yeah.
And he came out the other side of it pretty much on his own, somewhat, as opposed to somebody like Scott Hall who got involved with DDP, like Jake the Snake Roberts. So it's been wonderful to see that he could, take himself and get back on the right track and still be performing today in his 60s, I believe.
Yeah, so it is nice. And when I talk about Sting being, a churchgoer, it is nice to see him having come out the other side because so many guys didn't. And that's like the sad thing about wrestling is you see all these guys and some of them like really tragic, like Chris Benoit, which I don't even want to get into his story because it's so stinking tragic.
Whole nother podcast right there.
Man, yeah, it would take a whole podcast to go through that situation. But Benoit, I mean, is one of the maybe the 10 best wrestlers at the time of his height. But yeah, he's just driven crazy with whatever he's putting into his body and whatever he's doing to himself and
diving headbutts.
Oh
Yeah.
yeah. Well, CTE is definitely a point of discussion when you start talking about guys like Benoit. But yeah, there's so many. Do you listen to? There's a podcast out there, Keeping It 100 with Conan and Disco Inferno.
I would say I've dabbled, but when you say Disco Inferno, I usually go the other direction.
Yeah, it turns out Disco wasn't really playing a part. That's just that guy.
Lynn Gilberti.
Is that his real name?
Yeah. I'd be Disco Inferno too.
Right. I'm going to say I did enjoy some disco when he was on. Not Alex Wright, though. That guy can just get out of town. But another guy that...
I'd do the dance here, but...
Oh, man. WCW does what sets them apart also, besides from the NWOs, they have a flourishing subsection of wrestling called cruiserweights. And they really kind of get into that. Although once they get into their glory years, it's largely wasted. They largely waste a lot of guys like Eddie Guerrero would be a guy that they kind of wasted.
Chavo.
The Ultimo Dragon. Rey
Dragon.
Mysterio's the big one who got used a little bit more in stories, but it was always as like a, he wins sort of against Kevin Nash and then just gets absolutely destroyed, right? By the NWO.
Yes.
Yeah.
Jericho starts off as a cruiserweight.
Whoa. You don't just get to skip right by Chris Jericho.
I didn't know if we were going to come back to Jericho.
Oh, Chris Jericho's amazing. He's amazing. It's weird how some of these guys, as soon as they hit the scene, you're just like, yeah, this cat's different. This cat's different. Were you a Jericho fan, Jackson?
I think he had to go to WWE before I truly noticed him in the way that he is now. Probably not as much in the WCW days. I do look back at those fondly, and I find them enjoyable now, but...
he was just so... and when you read the stories, especially afterwards, of just how he's just doing his own thing, like he's not asking permission. Like one day he just shows up with this old dude named Rufus. Ralphus. It's Ralphus.
Yeah.
Didn't ask anybody. Just say, hey, put on this undersized shirt.
I think he was a ring truck driver, if I remember right.
Yeah.
Ralphus.
And calling out Goldberg every week.
Monday Night Jericho. Yeah, he was great. Great. And I haven't watched much WWE, but I did go to like a pay-per-view. DJ made me go to a pay-per-view. He didn't make me. I wanted to go with him because he had an extra ticket, and Jericho was there, and I was just very thrilled that he was still like there and like clearly a crowd favorite. Like, even as, you know, he's Chris Jericho, he's not necessarily a good guy, but you just love him anyways. But the bit in WCW where he's listing off the holds,
1004.
he's got like the dot matrix printer paper that he's cycling through. Hold number, they go to commercial, he comes back, he's like, hold number 849, arm bar. And then he's like, hold 850, leg something. Hold number 851, arm bar.
Arm bar makes several appearances on that list.
It's so funny.
I think there was moss-covered, three-handled family credenza. That's the one I remember.
What's a credenza?
I think it's a desk. I should have probably Googled that.
Wait, say that again.
I think it's a desk.
Oh, no. Say the whole name of the hold.
Moss-covered, three-handled family credenza.
You better watch it, Cody. I'm going to hit you with the moss-covered, three-handled family credenza if you don't watch it.
I'll hide my eyes.
Oh, that's just amazing. So, yeah, I mean, WCW just enjoys, like, they have all these characters, too, and not all of them they use very well.
The Juice.
Juventude?
Yeah.
Hoovy? Yeah.
Psychosis. I mean, any of the Latino wrestlers at that time, they're entertaining because there's something completely different.
Yeah, let's talk about the chairman.
Oh. I'm going to turn this over to Cody.
Let's talk about La Parka. Now, I did not know this, but apparently DJ told me this, that there was multiple La Parkas, which when I went back and watched, you could tell. Because one, you know, for a while, he's just a guy in a mask with a weird skeleton costume outfit. But then all of a sudden, he's got a lot more charisma. He does this like silly kind of, you know, Hispanic Ric Flair dance and then does like the knee wobble and then hits people in the head with chairs. And he becomes the chairman of the WCW. Chairman.
Love it.
Yeah.
Need more La Parka.
There's so many dudes in this time. And like, one thing that jumped out to me as I'm rewatching is the guys that knew like what the crowd wanted. Like, it wasn't enough to just come up with your sayings or your one-liners, but it had to be like stuff that the crowd wanted to participate in. Mm-hmm. So like K-Dog, Conan, finds like his shtick. Scott Hall did the survey, which is just amazing. Another one for the good guys. But yeah, they like the really good ones had this like thing they would do from town to town, and Conan had his too. I didn't care for his rap songs. Like they would every once in a while they would like, and now for K-Dog's new music video, and it was always the same. It was like him in khakis in like a car that was bouncing.
Yeah, lowrider.
Kurt Hennig had like some music.
Oh, okay. So Kurt Hennig. And there was a group of them. It was I Hate Rap.
Yeah, the West Texas Rednecks.
And my friends got really into them because they all fancied themselves rednecks. And so yeah, the West Texas Rednecks. Kurt Hennig, another dude that died early. But I love Kurt Hennig, an amazing performer.
Mr. Perfect.
Yes, amazing. I love even down to the thing where he would spit out his gum and then slap it out of the air towards the crowd.
He'd throw the towel behind his back. Perfect. Catch it.
It's so perfect. He just was like some of those guys really perfected. Just perfected the guy that you love to hate. Mm-hmm. And Kurt Hennig was one of those dudes. Kurt Hennig was one. He never did heel turns. Like he was just always that guy because it was too good to waste. Just too good to waste. So Goldberg wins the championship in '98, and then it gets kind of weird. Like,
say the least.
WCW in early 1999 has this moment where a lot of wrestling experts, this is the point where they think that WCW goes off the rails. So on the same episode, like there's two things that happen in this episode of Nitro. One is Tony Schiavone reveals who's going to win the match in WWE title match on Raw that night, because they had taped it days before.
And WCW had done this constantly.
Yeah. And so the story goes that they thought, so Mankind, Mick Foley, was going to win the WWE title, or did win the WWE title, but it wasn't going to air till later that night. So they're competing, and Tony Schiavone, who's a WCW announcer, announces over the air on Nitro that, he's going to win tonight. You don't need to tune into that because you already know what's going to happen.
That'll put butts in seats.
Yeah.
I remember that comment.
And as it turns out, people tune away because they want to see him win it.
Mick Foley's really enjoyable.
Yeah.
In whatever character he is. Cactus Jack, Mankind, Dude Love.
Even I knew, even though I didn't watch that, I knew about Sacco.
Yeah. Mr. Sacco.
Early Mankind is pretty deranged. That was one of those, my mom saw it, and you're not watching WWE anymore.
And so, but this is that point, because not only do they lose viewers, and from this point on, by the way, the ratings start steadily going down after this point. But not only does that happen, everybody watches Mick Foley win the WWE title. Then they switch back to Nitro for this infamous event. So they were coming off the Sunday night before, just the night before, where Kevin Nash ended the streak of Goldberg through much hilarity and shenanigans. Like Bam Bam Bigelow's involved, Scott Hall and like a taser are involved. There's just all this that happens. And then even then, I think people were, okay, whatever. They're the NWO Wolfpack, right? They're going to cheat. And then in a major miscalculation, Kevin Nash is going to fight Hulk Hogan, I guess, in the main event of Nitro. Hulk Hogan has, always was back and forth. He'd come back here at this point. And you think they're opposed to each other, and they call it the finger poke of doom, Cody, where Hulk Hogan puts his finger in Kevin Nash's chest, and he wildly falls to the mat, and Hulk Hogan pins him, and he basically gives the title back to him. And that was that. A lot of people say that was the incident. Let's see. This is from a site called WrestleCrap. The book called WrestleCrap, The Very Worst of Pro Wrestling.
They write good books. I've read all 3 of them, I believe.
Yeah, he says that was that. Fans had been burned one too many times by WCW and the NWO, and from that point on in 1999, ratings steadily dropped for the company. The WWE refers to the match as one of the most scandalous title changes of all time and states that shocking does not even adequately describe this moment. According to wrestling writers Brian Fritz and Christopher Murray, the event insulted fans, upset viewers, and alerted other wrestlers in the company of problems. The death of WCW, essentially.
WCW had gotten gimmicky by that point, because you have the wrestling match with Dennis Rodman and Karl Malone.
Oh yeah, and that was all trash. Karl Malone and Rodman.
You can't forget Jay Leno.
I had blocked out Jay Leno, so thank you.
Oh yeah, they get real gimmicky. So Vince Russo comes along after this, and boy, it gets. This is where it starts getting really hard for me to watch as I'm rewatching the Nitros. Once you get into the Vince Russo stuff, and then they get into this is probably the point where we need to talk about the movie, and we need to go to a special correspondent to do that. We met a guy at Comic-Con named Sam.
Sam is amazing.
Sam is amazing, and he's like a cinematic wonderkind.
To word it politely, yes.
He just knows stuff about all these movies. So we will get back and we can talk about the effects of this movie, Ready to Rumble, starring David Arquette. And we could talk about that when we get back. But first, let's go to Sam. We're going to call this. Sam's going to be popping up on the podcast a lot, by the way.
Sweet.
And we're going to call this segment 3 Minutes with Sam. Let's go to the Geek Phone.
The Geek Phone.
To the Geek Phone, Cody. All right, we have Sam now on the Geek Phone. Sam, what's up?
Oh, not much. I have been just taking a gander at movies, as it is my job or my hobby as well. How have you been?
I've been really good, Sam. We met Sam at Comic-Con, and now he's on the pod here, Pop Culture Pastor. And basically, this segment is going to be called 3 Minutes with Sam, and Sam is just going to have whatever movie kind of comes up in our conversations. We're going to have Sam break it down for maybe some things you didn't know, and just like a kind of a general unpacking of some knowledge. So, Sam, I'm just going to leave it to you. What do you know about Ready to Rumble, buddy?
Well, I know that this is a film that was released in 2000, and as far as I know, it was sort of a promotional film to promote the now defunct WWE promotion called World Championship Wrestling, or WCW. And from what I've seen and from what I've learned about WCW itself, it was sort of an unorthodox attempt to bring a more raw and more gritty version of WWE by basically bringing the wrestlers or the performers on a stage that was coated by a barbed wire. And I could tell it was very defunct that it went defunct due to its barbarity. But however, this isn't a very interesting film. It's simply about these two losers that just end up in this world of wrestling. It stars David Arquette, who fell off the map after the early 2000s, and Oliver Platt, who you may remember as a lead in films such as Married to the Mob and Beethoven and Flatliners and Three Musketeers, A Time to Kill, and Frost Nixon, Love and Other Drugs, and a few others as well that you may remember. This film also is not the most memorable of them, but it does have cameos by many wrestling personalities, including an uncredited John Cena, who was in the workout scene. As well. Yeah. So keep on the lookout for that. There's also certain individuals whom are national treasures in the world of wrestling. They are Goldberg, Diamond Dallas Page, and Sting, and Booker T, and of course, Randy Savage himself.
Oh, man. Yeah.
Himself. So while the film itself is by and large a complete awful film to watch, it is a love letter to many World Wrestling fans, and it is their dream. And for all these famous wrestlers, to be in one place at once, it is without a doubt a dream come true for many wrestling fans as well. There are a great many there. I've learned about this other group called the Nitro Girls, who were WCW fans, and they are in this film also. Mm-hmm. The film itself is directed by this guy named Brian Robbins, but it is also written by a man named Steve Brill, who you might remember as a frequent collaborator with Adam Sandler. Thus, the comedy is similar in style as well.
This is great stuff. I do remember the Nitro Girls, by the way. All right. Yes. So that's what you got. It's good stuff.
Well, it is others. If you want to hear other things wish to hear other things as well, I'm happy to tell you.
Oh, okay. Yeah. What else you got?
Well, it has while it's not really the best film, its soundtrack is really off the chart with hits by singers such as Dee Snider of Twisted Sister and Kid Rock and Run DMC and House of Pain and Papa Roach. And Motley Crue. So while it may not be the most, not be the best film, its soundtrack does deliver with hit songs.
Yeah.
With hit songs as well, and it's very interesting because WCW was really big at this time. It was founded in 1988, and and went on being very successful until it went defunct in 2001 as well. Which is odd because just a year prior, this was sort of the height of its popularity. I remember when I was young seeing commercials for toys for WCW as well.
Yeah. And, this is the beginning of the end here with this movie. So I was really into WCW, Sam, and this movie cost $24 million to make and only made 12.5 at the box office. That's not good.
Yes, which kind of led to WCW's downfall a little bit.
Yeah, they eventually go broke.
It caused them to go. It caused them to kind of go a little bit in their revenue, of course.
Well,
also,
Sam,
David.
You got more? All right.
Yeah. Also, David. Like I said, David Arquette is in it, who was kind of at the height of his career at this time. You may remember him from the slasher film as Officer Dewey Riley from Scream. Mm-hmm. Also, such other films include Wild Bill, Never Been Kissed, Buffy the Vampire Slayer, See Spot Run, Eight-Legged Freaks. But since then, since the early 2000s, he's kind of fallen off the map in recent years. Not much has been, said about him or heard about him either as well. So he's kind of one of those actors who were very big in the late 90s and early 2000s and then just disappeared.
Yeah. All right. That's good stuff, man. It's weird to see him and Oliver Platt in the same film. They're just two different kinds of careers there.
Yes, because Oliver Platt, you would expect him to be in more sophisticated films than David Arquette. Mm-hmm. It's kind of like mixing a Golden Globe winning actor with someone you would frequently see on, I don't know, MTV or something.
Yeah.
Kind of an odd couple to be
exact. That's a good comparison. Well, Sam, thank you so much. We're looking forward to coming back to you again the next time we have a movie for you to break down for us. Thanks so much, Sam.
Thanks so much. Just give me a call when that's needed. All right.
We will. 3 minutes with Sam. There you go.
And thank you very much. Good day.
All right, we're back. Sam's a great dude, isn't he?
He's amazing.
Let me tell you about Sam. We met Sam at Planet Comic-Con in Kansas City. Just a fabulous guy. We knew immediately we got to get this guy on the podcast. And Sam has been so gracious to work with us and zoom in. I mean, not zoom in, GeekPhone in.
Yeah.
On into the broadcast and into the pod. And he's just awesome, an amazing dude, and we're so thankful to Sam for humoring us and him being a part of the podcast.
Thank you, Sam.
Sam, you're a great dude, and we look forward to you breaking down a Be Kind Rewind soon, very soon. So Jackson, he talked all about Ready to Rumble, and he didn't sugarcoat it. Ready to Rumble's awful, and it's this movie. I mean, it's basically, is it okay to call it a WCW movie? I mean, it essentially is a WCW movie, but it was almost like it's a weird timing because movies take so long to get going and then develop and then film and then finish. And it was like they probably started coming up with this at their peak, but by the time this movie comes out, well, they're not doing well.
The death rattles.
Yeah. And in what is another gimmick, Cody, you mentioned gimmicks, and then Sam mentioned this in the call. In the gimmick, they let David Arquette win the World Heavyweight Wrestling Championship.
That's worse than the finger poke.
Oh, I think so too. To me, that's much worse. Because it just cheapens it. It doesn't mean anything.
And it was kind of the first time they ever put a belt on a celebrity. So I would probably co-sign that.
Yeah.
I mean, it'd be like myself going against Bill Goldberg and winning the World Heavyweight Championship. Makes no sense.
Yeah.
David Arquette and I are like the same size.
So Sam talked a lot about all the people in this movie. Oliver Platt's the weird one. Oliver Platt, like a fabulous actor, has been in a lot of great things. And then just all around him is this kind of mess. It's David Arquette, Scott Conn, Rose McGowan's in this, which is kind of weird too.
I think she was a Nitro girl, perhaps.
No, not Rose.
Oh,
Rose McGowan's like a serious actor.
well,
in the movie.
Oh,
She plays a Nitro girl.
the Nitro girls are in the movie, which is funny to me. And then a bevy of wrestlers, including, as Sam mentioned, an uncredited John Cena is in Ready to Rumble.
Jonathan Cena.
Yeah. So that's interesting. But Sting, Goldberg.
Well, you can't see him, so that's probably why no one knew.
uncredited.
Yeah.
He was there.
He was invisible. Diamond Dallas Page is like kind of the bad guy in this movie, although it's so forgettable. So forgettable. And this is the death knell of WCW because it cost $24 million to make the movie. The box office was $12.5 million. That's not good, kids. That's not good at all. And 23% on Rotten Tomatoes.
That's generous.
And this is like, by this time, the WCW is over. And every time I watch that last Nitro, where like Shane McMahon's on it, and it's, oh man, it's just so depressing.
And Ready to Rumble's not a movie that's had a second life similar to No Holds Barred.
No, it is not a cult classic. No Holds Barred, which stars Hulk Hogan and
Zeus.
Tiny Zeus Lister. Yeah, amazing. This is not No Holds Barred. This is a bad movie. And it probably hurts David Arquette as well, because David Arquette was kind of a big deal. I mean, he's in the Scream franchise that's right around just after this happens, just after he's like on Friends because he's, attached to Courtney Cox, who he eventually marries.
Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, this doesn't go well for him. Doesn't go well for really anyone in this movie.
It's all downhill.
But that is, pretty much the end of WCW. What should we talk about here? Do we need to talk about guys that we feel like don't like WC? So WCW has a reputation of having dudes because they focus on these old stars in the NWO and all that, and that's kind of the direction where they get successful. The prevailing opinion on WCW is they had this wealth of talent underneath that they kind of wasted. Do we want to talk about that?
They were somebody that they used the established stars to get the viewers, and they forgot that eventually they would have to make their own. Mm-hmm. I think that's still a problem with wrestling today is you depend on your Brock Lesnar's, your Goldbergs, and you do that at the expense of the guys that are there on a regular basis that are going to be the ones that carry on from there. Mm-hmm. There's just not a lot of new stars. You get your John Cena's and I guess you would call Roman Reigns one, but that's few and far between. Everybody else is just kind of and they're in that wrestling niche, similar to what you mentioned earlier. They're not somebody that's got crossover appeal that's going to headline their own movie that WWE doesn't produce, things like that. And that was a huge problem for WCW is anybody that would get too big, the NWO would have to smack down. And, Goldberg and Sting weren't immune to that. Sting joins the NWO. I think by the time of the NWO ended, Cody was in the NWO.
Cody, did you turn heel?
Wolfpack for life.
You're just too sweet. Okay, I'm just going to throw out some names here for you. Because this is, I'm looking at a list of, this is from Bleacher Report. This is, according to them, the guys that were underused the worst, that should have been bigger. Bam Bam Bigelow is up there. He's not necessarily a young dude, but a name. In fact, I remember by like the late 80s, he was kind of a big deal.
He was in the WrestleMania video game. I remember the flaming head tattoos.
Yeah.
I like to use him in the video games. He was great. Chris Kanyon
Mortis
is on their list. Yeah, so he's Mortis for a while, which, when I knew that and I went back and rewatched it, it was just like, oh, that's such a weird like thing to bury yourself under a mask. But they were clearly trying to do the Kane Undertaker thing, right?
Yeah, it's not something that I volunteer often, but things like Mortis and the Dungeon of Doom scared me as a child. So I look back at that now, and
Dungeon of Doom.
Mortis would come out, and I'd be like, "Oh, I have to go do something in the other room." And
yeah,
I'll take out the trash for you, Mom.
On the subject of the Dungeon of Doom, I recently saw a recent picture of Ming.
Oh, I forgot about Ming.
He looks like someone who'd be like someone's nice, kindly old grandpa now, and it weirded me out. I was like, "Oh
but he'd
man!"
still take your eye out.
Yep.
He had the. What was the Tongan death grip? It would be like right below your chin and the neck. Mm-hmm. That was like his finishing move. Never really explained the mechanics of that. It just set people down.
I believe it. So
also on this list of people underused, Van Hammer. Van Hammer, a member of Raven's flock for a while.
Raven had a weird crew.
Yeah, he did.
Kidman, Riggs, Sick Boy, Reese.
Raven was doing the grunge thing.
Yeah.
So his finishing move was the even flow. And he would use all these like Pearl Jam catchphrases.
I can't remember what I ate for lunch, but I can tell you the members of the flock. I'm not sure what that says about me.
Yeah, I mean, so you got Van Hammer, Saturn, Perry Saturn, Kidman was in it. Like, poor Billy Kidman. Billy Kidman ends up being a very popular wrestler, and even when he's popular, they don't really know what to do with him. Like, hey, just put him in a wife beater and jorts, and let him go out there and be popular. And then they try to. He actually has like a feud with Hulk Hogan at one point.
Yeah, towards the end
with Vince when Vince Russo's there. Oh man, it's so bad, so bad. I always feel bad for Billy Kidman. I wonder whatever happened to that dude.
I think he's a trainer or agent still with WWE.
That's amazing. High Voltage. This says, I truly don't believe I ever saw High Voltage win a match. Not one. I can't even remember if they had a finishing move. And this guy says, you have to believe someone can win a match to put them over.
Yeah.
But the High Voltage, that was Chaos and Rage.
I remember Chaos.
They were specimens.
I just remember their songs "Danger," "High Voltage" about 100 times as they walked to the ring.
They list Hugh Morris, real name Bill DeMott. Hugh Morris was trying to do like
the laughing man,
kind of a Joker thing.
Yeah.
But he had charisma, I thought, and I thought he was wasted too. Jackson didn't think so.
No,
not so much.
Yeah, I wasn't a huge Hugh guy.
But he was over three. Whenever they let him win, and he's like over 300 pounds, and he'd do that moonsault, and I'd be like, dang.
He was a one move guy. You know, you want to see the moonsault, but then it's like, okay, thanks. See you later.
That's true. Eddie Guerrero, which any list of obligatory, he's the obligatory name on the list of guys that got wasted because he had charisma.
Oh yeah. And WWE knew how to use it once he got there.
He wins the WWE Championship over Brock Lesnar, of all people. And Eddie was a little guy.
He got kind of bigger.
I mean, by that time he had found the way to get bigger.
May have been chemically aided.
Say your prayers, inject your vitamins. That was always the...
Eddie's gone now too, right?
Yeah.
Passed away. Scott Norton.
Flash,
famous NWO member who once he joined the NWO was relegated to like mid-card stuff, although was huge in Japan. I always thought that was something they were just saying on those WCW broadcasts, but no, he was like really big in Japan.
The older I've gotten in like the wrestlers I like, I find that they say they're huge in Japan, and then like they show clips now of, oh, Chris Jericho's wrestling in Japan. And I'm like, oh, he actually was.
Wrath.
Yeah.
Brian
Mortis
Clark.
And
yeah,
Wrath.
so Mortis was paired up with Wrath early, and then he goes on kind of doing his own thing. He actually gets a streak going, and people start kind of digging him, and then he runs afoul of Kevin Nash, who's a booker, right?
Yep.
Now, there's some discrepancy here because Kevin Nash claims he's not booking, but it's just kind of general knowledge that everyone says, yeah, he was. And so Kevin Nash wanted to be known as a guy who broke streaks before he beat Goldberg, but he had his eye on that. And so he ends Brian Clark Wrath's streak, which he had started. And apparently they were not friends.
Yeah. Good old Atom Bomb.
Yeah. He had a great finishing move, did Wrath. And he was huge. I mean, just huge. We mentioned Chris Benoit. I think that was the saddest part, is like that dude never even, like, for being recognized as one of the top wrestlers of the day.
I think he left as champion, though, so if he'd stuck around, that he might not have made that list. But
Yeah. Mike Awesome. You remember Mike Awesome?
that 70s guy, the fat chick Thriller.
Oh, no. So bad. So bad. That was well into the Attitude when WCW had kind of shifted into the Attitude era themselves. And they've got women coming out to the ring dressed in not much. And yeah, they couldn't just be satisfied with the Nitro girls, where you had dance routines like cheerleaders, basically. They had to go even farther. And boy, Mike Awesome's a part of that time. He actually had a bus. Do you guys remember he had a bus?
Yeah.
They would drive him down.
I think they were doing a Partridge Family type.
They list Bret Hart.
He kind of did that to himself, but
Spoiler alert.
But it's so weird because when he joins WCW, it's the same thing for the longest time. It's like he's not really wrestling. He's just kind of showing up occasionally. And then the whole thing is like, we're going to leave you in mystery with who his allegiances lie with. And it's just like, okay, but that's not interesting.
I've read his book. He's kind of a miserable person.
Oh, okay. Well, hold on. Let's take a time out for this. You've read Bret Hart's book.
It borders on dictionary level of length. I can't get that time back.
Is he just one of those guys who's like, I was the best and no one used me right and it's everyone else's fault?
He's somebody that didn't understand that, and I don't like to use the word fake, but that wrestling was predetermined. Mm-hmm. That, you're the good guys and bad guys, you are what you're written to be. Mm-hmm. And he couldn't let go of that fact that, eventually people turned on him and he was a better human than Shawn Michaels and things like that. And it just came across really whiny.
Well, they talk about him getting robbed.
The Montreal screw job.
Yeah, I mean, that's always the thing that comes up with Bret Hart. And every time someone brings it up, I'm like, isn't that like the whole point of wrestling? That the ref is in someone's pocket and cheats somebody? And isn't that like what normally happens? I was always confused about that.
If you watch Wrestling with Shadows, that'll kind of explain, he thought he had one arrangement, Vince went another way, who knew what. It's still up for discussion even now.
Mm-hmm. Chris Jericho is another guy that's on this list that they say was wasted. They look at the example of his feud with Goldberg, Goldberg's attitude during this period, him being maybe difficult to work with. In fact, there's a story that DJ is always telling about apparently Chris Jericho knocked Goldberg out cold.
Yeah, Chris Jericho's one of those backstage. He's gotten in several fights. Almost went toe-to-toe with Brock Lesnar.
That's amazing.
Not sure he came out on the right end of that one.
Yeah.
You don't want to mess with the guy who's actually does ultimate fighting, like real fighting, right?
No.
That's probably not a good idea.
Slash was like a championship, Roman Greco wrestler. And he knew his way around being a tough dude.
I feel like that dude would snap my legs within 5 seconds.
Oh, yeah.
3 seconds.
I was going to say 5 was generous.
All right. Do you have any final thoughts about WC? Is there anything we've not talked about that you wanted to talk about?
I think we kind of covered, a nice Cliff Notes version. I don't want to drive your whole viewership away by really getting into the weeds, the AOL Time Warner merger that did ultimately kill the company.
Yeah. Well, there's a lot going on around the storytelling woes, including the merger you just mentioned.
Yeah, if you believe the rumors, WCW would have continued, but Time Warner and AOL, they didn't want it on their program, so when it came time to be sold, there was no TV slot, so Vince got the tape library for next to nothing, and WCW was dead after the ill-fated invasion storyline, of course, right before I took my siesta.
That storyline had so much potential. Like, they could have done so much with kind of having that rival, like, oh, is WCW going to come back and, like, challenge? And,
Well, again,
no, we're going to waste it.
not to geek out even more. A lot of those guys, they had contracts through Turner, or their contracts would be paid out for the length when WCW went under. So your guys like Hogan, Nash, Hall, they got to sit at home, collect checks, didn't have to go out on the road. So the Invasion gets Buff Bagwell, the Invasion gets Booker T, which, you know, Booker T, as we touched on earlier, somebody that ultimately made the best of it. But
Booker T's amazing, and he finally gets his chance to shine as the WCW is tanking, which is unfortunate because Booker T was the man. Amazing. He's amazing. I loved Booker T. And meeting him was just the cherry on top. He's a nice dude.
I was going to ask that because they always say don't meet your heroes. And
oh no, wonderful guy.
Okay,
wonderful
great.
guy. He was, he was great. You also mentioned someone we should probably talk about because I personally loved Buff Bagwell.
He's great on Twitter.
Buff the stuff.
He's got charisma. He's got charisma, and playing that heel guy who's really proud of his body. And him, and how have we not talked about Scott Steiner? Big Papa Pump. Who is like, as one of the Steiners, is one of the most boring, forgettable wrestlers ever. And then when he heel turns into the NWO and becomes Big Papa Pump, oh, man. He's just so wildly entertaining, if not a little too much for live television.
He might be legitimately crazy. And if you do go to Shoney's down in Georgia, you might see him. That might be closed, but I remember that was one of the craziest things I ever heard is he operates a Shoney's. It's like,
Nice.
I'm not sending food back at that Shoney's.
I mean, the fact that I have not eaten at the Big Booty Daddy's Shoney's is just I'm really failing at life.
So, like, at this time, you have Buff the Stuff, you have Scott, and then Lex Luger, Mr. 4% body fat. Like, that, he talked about that nonstop, but he also had my favorite submission move.
The torture rack.
Yes.
Yeah.
You go to the torture rack. No one does it these days. I'm like, I don't know why. Bring it back.
That's a good subject. Any favorite finishing moves for you there?
I
Jackson?
remember the jackhammer. I had never seen anything like that before.
That's Goldberg's.
Yeah. And the spear as well. That was back when he used to knock guys halfway across the ring with it. Let's see.
The cruiserweights all had pretty cool ones.
Oh, yeah. Like,
So,
Ultimo would do a cool moonsault.
Hoovy did like the 4 whatever.
450.
The 450. And then Billy Kidman would do the
Shooting star.
yeah, it was a backflip off the top rope. What was that? Was it like on a back 1.5 or I don't even know.
Yeah, it was the shooting star press. It moved that almost crippled Brock Lesnar.
Yeah. Against Kurt Angle.
Yeah, WrestleMania 19.
Wait, he did that?
Yeah, tried.
Yeah.
That's the key word, tried.
Oh, like you watch the clip and it's like, how is he walking?
I don't even know. Like, I don't like watching stuff like that. That was the one thing. Here's we can end with this. Wrestling's fake. It's scripted, but it's not fake in the form of that these guys are athletes and there's real wear and tear in their bodies. I remember the exact moment when that landed on me as someone who's just entertained by it, when Sid Vicious snapped his leg.
Saw that one.
Oh, and to this day, I'm nightmares, man. Oh, because Sid Vicious was this monster of a man. And when that happened, you're like, oh. And it's one of those like gruesome leg injuries that you're just, you can't unsee. You can't unsee. So many of these dudes. I just recently watched the Nitro where Buff Bagwell hurt his neck. And it looked so inconspicuous. But he just hit his neck at just like kind of the right angle, and you could see, and he's actually paralyzed in the ring for a while. Because I don't know if it's if it's a stinger, he ends up having to get neck surgery, and is out for a while. But he eventually came back. But I don't know if he was ever the same.
I don't think so.
Yeah. All right, man. Good stuff. WCW 90s wrestling holds a special place in my heart. It's nice to meet you, Jackson.
Nice to meet you as well. Thanks for allowing me to be here.
It's always nice to meet someone else that has that special relationship with WCW. Cody, here as always.
Yeah, I just fill a seat, so.
Thank you so much for listening to the podcast this week. I'm sorry this is such a niche pop culture item. I feel like this is such a niche. There's some people who can be like, well, I didn't watch any of this.
Well, you're welcome for this preview, and you can stream it on Peacock now.
You can. I would advise, okay, this is serious. It's on Peacock. Go find WCW Nitros, and if you like, if male soap operas are something that sounds appealing to you, just start watching around. Well, when did we say the NWO started? I mean, that's really when you want to start watching.
96.
96.
Yeah.
Go back and start watching around May 1996.
But stay away from WCW Thunder.
Yeah, don't watch anything else. Don't watch the pay-per-views. Don't watch Thunder. Just watch Nitros. Just make your way through Nitros 96 through the end.
Oh, we also forgot to mention the Giant, a.k.a. the Big Show.
Paul White?
Yeah.
Wichita State alum.
Captain Insano.
I mean, that's the only reason he's interesting, though.
He was Andre the Giant's son for like 5-10 minutes.
Yes.
Till they
He's
realized
just
that
so...
Like, I mean, he's larger than life, and then
he's huge.
They kind of use him for a little bit, and then once they have to move away from calling him Andre the Giant's son,
he was just so uninteresting. They didn't know what to do with him.
He's turned heel to face maybe 300-400 times.
Yeah. So the part I'm at on Nitro, where I'm rewatching it right now, he just randomly turned NWO again after being like a good guy and being tag team partners with Sting, and then he just randomly turns to NWO, and really no reasons given. He just is. And it's like, yeah, that's because they had a problem with him because he doesn't have a lot of charisma, and they just don't know what to do with him because you have to use him. I mean, he's 7'4". He's over 500 pounds.
He did throw a mean drop kick in WCW.
Yeah.
yes, he did.
The master of the choke slam. I would be remiss if I didn't do one Bruce Buffer. One Bruce Buffer, because I forgot how much Buffer gets big off of.
Michael
Buffer, not
say
Bruce.
Bruce
not
is
Bruce.
UFC.
Michael Buffer.
Yeah, one of the Buffers.
I mean, they named the movie after his catchphrase, but I forgot how much he was on these WCW Nitros. But like,
is that still copyrighted?
He would always say the same things. Yeah, if we were doing it for the podcast, it'd be like, now for the 4 in attendance and the 10s and 10s listening around the world, ladies and gentlemen, let's get ready to rumble. I forgot, man. He's like almost on every episode of Nitro. That dude got paid.
He did.
Yeah, they wanted that big fight feel, and I mean, it was unique, and it's not something that's ever been replicated. But as you said, he got paid.
Yeah.
5 minutes of work.
Lots of money just for having a great voice. All right. If you were into WCW, we'd love to hear anything we missed, something you liked, your favorite wrestler, who you thought they didn't use enough, your favorite storylines. Go ahead and don't tell us if it was the LWO. Nobody wants to hear that.
I'm all about the
Latino World Order.
Yes.
Everybody was a world order at some
WO.
point. But yeah, go ahead and let us know on our Facebook page, on the comment below the where we posted this podcast on our Facebook page or Twitter, and tell us what you thought. And otherwise, if you weren't a fan of wrestling, we're sorry.
Please listen next week.
Next week will be better for you. We'll see you all then.
See you in the next Pop Culture Pastor.